Chapter 12, Sensory Mechanisms, Screencast 3. Now, this screencast is focusing on the special sense of hearing and balance, and our ear is responsible for both of those. The first thing that we're going to look at primarily are those issues as they relate to sound, then we'll talk about balance. Now, when we talk about properties of sound, there's two in particular that we need to keep in mind. One is loudness, and this is actually related to the amplitude or how large the sound waves are, and this is what's always recorded in decibels. Pitch is actually the tone. Now, this is about the frequency or the number of wave cycles per second. Now, when we see a high frequency, that is going to be a sound that has a high pitch, and a lower frequency is a sound that has a lower pitch. Here we can basically look at some of these characteristics. So notice the amplitude first. Okay, so this is going to be a soft low tone. Okay, and here we have a loud low tone. Now here a soft high tone and a loud high tone. So the two things that we're interested here are going to be, once again, the number of cycles per second, and that's frequency or pitch, or amplitude, which is the actual height of the sound wave that's being recorded. Now, many of you may actually have an Apple Watch, and if you have Beyond Series 3, one of the features that they have there is a sound monitor. And you can actually turn that sound monitor on, and it records ambient sound and will actually give you a warning based on the decibel. So that's what's actually being recorded is the loudness, because that's generally what is associated with causing damage to the ear. This is just a list of various common sounds and how it might impact your hearing, along with the amplitude or decibels. So when we start looking at where we can start looking at potential ear damage or damage to our hearing, first we start off with a power lawnmower. Okay, so cumulative exposure here causes hearing loss. Newer mowers are a lot quieter. But one of the things, when you look at individuals that are working on landscaping, you'll notice that many of those professional landscapers now wear ear protection. So something that we are much aware of. One thing that I think is something to be really concerned about is when we start looking at earbuds. I can't tell you the number of times when I am walking in the hallway and I can actually hear someone that has earbuds or headphones on, and I can actually hear the music pretty loudly myself. Imagine the risk that they are experiencing for hearing loss. When I run, I actually have specific earphones that do not plug into my ear canal. They actually bone conduction. So there's also the safety factor there when I am out in public running or anything like that. I still can hear things of my surrounding environment. So I think that's really important overall. So once again, you should have a general idea, okay, when we're talking about the types of sounds that potentially may cause damage. Now, things that you want to be comfortable with are the anatomical structures of the ear. And I'm going to point out a table with the structures and their associated function. So this is something I could probably ask via matching. So the pinna, that is the outer portion of the ear, and it acts as a funnel. It's going to help direct sound to the auditory canal. We have the auditory canal, and that actually directs the sound waves to the tympanic membrane or the eardrum. Now, structurally, the eardrum or tympanic membrane, and I will accept either answer, okay? It separates the outer ear from the middle ear. So it vibrates in response to sound waves, and it passes along vibrations. And within the middle ear, there's actually three very, very small bones. And we'll kind of talk about those bones in particular. They are the smallest bones of the body, and they are the hammer, anvil, and stirrup, and those are the common names associated with those bones. Now, if we look at the middle ear, the role of the middle ear is actually to amplify the sound. And so once again, the first structure of the middle ear are the following. There's those three really small bones, so hammer, anvil, and stirrup. You should know them in that order. Okay, you may see them as malleus, incus, or stapes, but on an exam I will go with hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Here, the sound is converted to vibrations of the tympanic membrane, and these are passed on through these bones. Now, there's a fairly significant amplification of sound due to the movement of these bones in our ear related to the vibrations as they move. The stapes, or the stirrup, that is the last of the bones, that actually passes the vibrations onto the oval window, and then it will actually enter the inner ear, or the cochlea. Now, another structure is known as the auditory tube. Its more technical name is the eustachian tube. What that does, that actually connects to the throat and it equalizes pressure. Kind of imagine whenever you are at altitude and you experience changes in height, you feel that weirdness in your ear, and generally you will kind of plug your nose and kind of blow forcefully in an effort to equalize pressure. Scuba divers, or also in particular, will have to learn how to equalize the pressure in their auditory canal, because diving at deep depths can actually create permanent damage. Now, here are the structures. So one of the things that you should be able to do is identify them with their appropriate function. Okay, so here's that auditory tube that I was referring to before. Here we have the cochlea, quite often referred to as a snail looking, because that's kind of what it looks like. Here we can see the three bones, so the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Okay, we can see that oval window. It's really kind of hard to see because it's blocked by the stirrup. Here's the vestibular cochlear nerve. So keep in mind, this has two branches. It has a branch for balance. So here's the balance apparatus that we find in the inner ear. And here, this is the auditory component. So once again, both the sensation of balance and hearing are housed within the inner ear. Now, what the cochlea does, that's where the actual conversion of these mechanical sound waves to action potentials actually occurs. And as I said before, the cochlea actually looks like a coiled snail. When you were to stretch it out, it's a tapered tube, and there are two outer canals. There's the vestibular and tympanic canals, and there's inner fluid-filled duct, which is the cochlear duct. And what you find here are these hair cells, and the hair cells are mechanoreceptors, and they have these hair-like extensions that are embedded in the tectorial membrane. Now, the organ of Corti, that's where the hair cells, or the mechanoreceptors, and the tectorial membrane are actually located. Now, what happens here is the process of conversion. So the vibrations of the oval window, they pass through the cochlear fluid as pressure waves. Now, these pressure waves result in bending of the hair cells found in that organ of Corti. Now, differently pitched sounds result in stimulation of hair cells in different regions of the cochlea. High pitches occur near the base of the cochlea, closer to the oval and round windows, and low pitches actually occur closer to the tip of the cochlea. These action potentials are then carried by the auditory nerve to the vestibular cochlear nerve to the brain, where these action potentials will actually be interpreted into sounds. Here we can actually see the process that's kind of going on. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because, once again, I think you can walk through the process. Okay? This isn't something I'm going to get into a lot of detail on the exam, but you should be generally familiar with that process. That these hair cells are what's stimulated, generating the action potentials, and that's the signal that we actually interpret as sound. Now here we can basically see how these hair cells are moving, and once again, it's all about action potentials being generated and all about the hairs moving in a particular direction. So we can see the neurotransmitter being released, resulting in more action potentials, in the movement here. And depending upon here, you really look at the hairs being moved in a different direction, and notice very little action potential. So there's actually less action potential generated here than with the hair cells at rest. Now, The balance component is known as the vestibular apparatus. And what we have here are 3 semicircular canals and a vestibule. Once again, they contain hair cells that are embedded in a gel-like matrix. And these hair cells bend in response to movement, specifically position of our head. Now, rotational movement is really important. So the movement of fluid in the semicircular canals bends these cells, and we have signals. Now, another sensation that's picked up is position of the head and linear acceleration. So there's other crystals that bend in the hair cells in the vestibule, and that's how our body kind of recognizes head position and also these rotational movements. It's really important, especially when imagine a dancer or a skater when you're doing these complex moves involving rotation. Here we can basically see the structure, the vestibular apparatus. It's fairly intricate, okay? But the thing that I want us to kind of remember here is balance also is housed within the inner ear along with hearing. So I'm not going to go into a lot of the anatomical differences, but I could probably ask something related to the overall role of the vestibular apparatus and its balance. Here we can actually look at, once again, the movement. We can see what's happening with the head tilt versus linear acceleration. I'm not going to go into that depth beyond the fact that the vestibular apparatus is responsible for balance. Here, these are the structures. So I might ask overall for a matching question here. And I would look at these structures primarily. When I look at vestibular canals, once again, I'm not going to hold you specific to rotational movement or position of the head and linear acceleration. I just want you to be comfortable that that vestibular apparatus is how we relate balance. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure. So this table here is pretty important. This is an animation that's focusing on the structures of the human ear, so I definitely recommend that you take some time and review it.